And it is significant that our first bilateral meeting in person is with Japan. It emphasizes our important relationship and all of the cooperative work we have to do together. I will say that, of course, our approach to China and our shared coordination and cooperation on that front will be part of the discussion, as will our joint commitment to the denuclearization of North Korea. Security will be a prominent issue, regional security as well.
The White House says that President Biden will host his South Korean counterpart to in-person talks next month. Mr. Biden and Mr. Suga are also expected to discuss the deterioration of ties between Japan and South Korea. Michio Ishida tells us what Mr. Suga is hoping to achieve when both leaders meet today.
For Japan, the first and foremost aim of the trip by Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is to build a relationship of trust with President Joe Biden. To prepare for this trip, Mr. Suga met with his predecessor, Shinzo Abe, who notched close ties with former U.S. President Donald Trump. A strong alliance with the U.S. is the cornerstone to Japan's foreign and security policy.
バイデン大統領との信頼関係を構築をし、自由、民主主義、人権、そして法の支配、この普遍的価値で結ばれた日米同盟をさらに強固なものにしたい、このように思っています。
On the back of that, Japan wants to push with realizing a free and open Indo-Pacific to counter China, which has been increasing its maritime activity in disputed waters. Mr. Suga is also expected to share with Mr. Biden his views on China's alleged human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, the situation in Hong Kong and Taiwan, as well as the violence in Myanmar. North Korea is also expected to be highlighted as the Biden administration reviews its policy towards the isolated country. As the meeting takes place just days before Mr. Biden's climate change summit, the two leaders are expected to discuss the issue extensively. Mr. Suga has set a goal for Japan to be carbon neutral by 2050, but Mr. Biden could press Japan for a near-term target on the reduction of CO2 emission. The two sides are expected to issue a joint statement at the end of the meeting.
日米それぞれの国の関心事項について幅広く議論をしていきたい、このように思います。そして自由で開かれたインド太平洋、その実現に向けて日米のリーダーシップを世界に示したい、このように考えています。
Well, we spoke with Sheila Smith from the Council on Foreign Relations, and she says that the U.S.-Japan alliance extends beyond Tokyo's territorial concerns with China and will include the wider region's worries about Beijing's growing might.
Article 5 of the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty has been noted as covering those islands, territory under the administration of Japan. So I don't think you're going to hear much more about that specific problem. I think the China piece was really focused on in the 2+2 meeting between Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin when they visited Tokyo last month. I do think that obviously the conversation about China extends beyond the specifics of the Japanese relationship with China, but also encompasses the larger Indo-Pacific region's sensitivity to the growing activities of China. So I think the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, as you noted, will be also a very strong piece of the conversation, how the United States and Japan will contribute to moving that agenda forward and developing deeper ties with other neighbors in the region.
Still ahead on Asia now. With COVID-19 vaccinations gathering pace, the question remains, will we need booster shots? And later, the US and Japan to present a united front on Taiwan with a joint statement.
CNA Leadership Summit. Presenting partner, Daikin. Climate change, one of the most urgent challenges we face today. Join us on a discussion for a green recovery plan. Hear sustainable strategies from policymakers on paving a way forward. Find out more about the impact the collective action can bring in the years to come. Understand from experts how private and public sectors can collaborate for a more sustainable economy. Gain insights on what business leaders can do to harness green financing, investments, and technologies to shape our recovery plan. Learn how institutions can work together to achieve compliance, accountability, and ethical disclosure. CNA Leadership Summit 2021, coming to you this April. Organised by MediaCorp. Official car partner, BMW. Official partner, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada.
I long to visit the other side of the Korean border. It's not about unification. It is more about reuniting Koreans cruelly separated by politics and ideology. Lim Yang-seok, CNA, Seoul.
This Saturday, how the global semiconductor shortage will hit consumers.
Few companies are investing into cutting-edge technologies and prices may increase.
China gets tough on Alibaba. What's next?
China tech companies will face increasing scrutiny.
Plus, the turnaround from paper documents to digital in the aviation sector. This Saturday on CNA.
Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai sentenced to 15 months in jail for unauthorized assembly during anti-government protests in 2019. India's COVID-19 cases hit another record daily high. Many states are grappling with a shortage of hospital beds and vaccine doses. Tough new measures have also been imposed. Experts saying the cost of these restrictions is the steepest for the poor. Neha Punia reports.
Farzana and Devi live barely 10 kilometers away from each other. They've both been without a steady source of income for several months, but there's a huge gulf between the lives they lead. Last year, when India announced a sudden and strict lockdown in March, Farzana lost her job and has been struggling to find work ever since.
उसके चक्कर में काम के लिए हमें बता रखा था कि पहली तारीख से आप आइएगा अभी कह रहे हैं अभी रुक जाइए क्योंकि कोरोना चल रहा है.
Her children have been forced to start working to help support the family, who've been getting by on just $50 a month. But for Devi, the lack of a steady job has not posed a tough challenge. A freelance teacher, she's still able to make $800 a month whenever she does find work.
That I'm privileged. I have enough savings to see me through. I went back to, doing something that I hadn't done in decades. That is, I started writing again.
This inequality is long-standing. Before COVID-19, 10% of India's population controlled more than 70% of the nation's wealth. But the pandemic has widened this gap significantly. During last year's lockdown, more than 120 million Indians lost their jobs and 7 million are still unemployed. While India's billionaires saw their wealth grow by 35% last year, a majority of the country's households suffered varying degrees of income losses, pushing millions into poverty. Experts say India's income inequalities are so stark because about 90% of the country's workforce is employed in the informal sector. Here, there are no fixed incomes, no job guarantees, and no social protection. And it's this group that's been hit the hardest by the pandemic. 11 million migrant workers like Bhagwati Devi were forced to leave Indian cities last year when the lockdown was imposed. She walked for 10 days to reach her village in the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. Bhagwati says she had no choice but to come back to Delhi. There aren't enough jobs in her village.